What do you mean?
Working over there.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, working over there. Hey guys, how y'all doing? Wonderful. No, thank you.
Good, good.
We'll be back. All right.
What do you mean, what about me? I'm not calling you.
Hey, this is Andy. We're getting ready to start here in a minute or two. We're getting the chairman's computer set up. It had to, of course, load some updates, and so it's been slowly but surely doing that for the last 30 minutes. So give us just a second. Looks like he is about ready, so you should see his face just in a minute.
I want to welcome everybody this afternoon. We got a full agenda, so we'll go ahead and get started. Need a roll call, Andy?
Yes, sir. Let's see. Let's start with Bullitt County. You know who's here from here, from Bullitt County. Thank you for joining us, Keith. Anybody from the city of Charlestown? J-Town?
Matt Minier.
Matt? Jeffersonville? Mount Washington?
Yes,
Where?
Barry.
How about New Albany? Edwardsville? St. Matthews?
Keenan.
Keenan? Clark County?
Brian Dixon.
Brian? Floyd County? Nick, or Don? Anybody from IDEM? Typically not. I don't believe there's one today. How about NDOT? See Carly.
Carly's here.
Carly? Anybody from the Jefferson Riverport? Kentucky DAQ? How about Kentucky Transportation Cabinet? Hi, Cedro Delgado's in the room, folks. Let's see. Louisville Metro APCD. I see multiple people on there. Who do we have?
Hi, this is Michelle.
Michelle?
Craig.
Greg? Bradley. I'll check them off. Hi, Bradley, if you can hear us. Who else from Metro? Anybody else from Metro? Goins in the room.
Amanda's here.
Yeah, I see Amanda. Okay. The airport. Louisville Riverport Authority. Miguel Zamora. I haven't seen Miguel. Miguel sometimes joins us in person. Oldham County. There's one.
Jim Urban.
Jim. Port of Indiana. Park Accessibility Advisory Council. Town of Clarksville.
Kevin.
Hi, Kevin. Thanks for joining us, TCCC. New face to this committee. And Tark.
Rita Popekju.
Rita? How about any advisory members? Anybody from Federal Highways on the line or any other advisory members? I don't see anybody. I think everybody that I can see on Zoom has been, is a voting member or an alternate. Bruce from Trimark. Thank you for joining us, Bruce. We have more than enough for quorum, Mr. Griffey.
Great, sir. The September 2022 meeting minutes, I hope everybody had a chance to review those, and we need a motion to approve.
So
Motion
moved.
to.
Second.
And a second. Thank you all. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we'll move on. The TPC report, Andy.
Yes, sir. So I have two give regarding we did not have a
Word for y'all.
we didn't have an October TCC meeting due to the Indiana MPO Council. Yeah, thank you. So September 22nd was TPC met. If I'm not mistaken, we had a very similar agenda to this body in September. A couple of things to note from that meeting. We had a guest speaker, Matt Ruther. Matt Ruther, for those that don't know him, he's from Kentucky State Data Center, which is affiliated with U of L. He gave us a good report, and some of you all are here for that, discussing some of the demographic projections that they do at that agency. So I encourage you all, as counties and local governments, to reach out to Matt and the Kentucky State Data Center as needed, or KIPTA, and we can reach out on your behalf, I suppose, as well. We also formally received, at that meeting back in September, that is, our federal certification review findings. So we've got, let's see, we ended up on 2 corrective actions, 5 or so commendations, which are the good ones, and then several recommendations. We'll be working on those in the coming weeks and months to get the corrective actions fixed, and we got a plan in place already for that. Otherwise, in the September meeting, Valerie updated our freight network. Randy and Joseph gave the congestion analysis that you all saw, and there's administrative modification as typically done at TPC. Moving on to October, the TPC met on October, immediately preceding the board meeting a couple weeks ago. Of note in that meeting, for those that don't know, the KYTC is in a data collection phase for their long-range plan, long-range statewide transportation plan. And so their consultant came, Karen Mohammadi from Michael Baker, came and presented to the committee on the outreach they are seeking now. I believe the survey probably has closed between now and then. I think it was early November close date, so you might take a look at that nonetheless. A very important thing that we did last month in TPC was our CMAQ priorities. For those that don't know, in Kentucky, we must prioritize the CMAQ projects. And so CMAQ projects that come into us as a region, and then we send them to Frankfurt for their consideration. And so that got done. Nick handled that for us at that meeting. Nick also gave us a good presented on some of the changes that many of you all presented to KIPTA in the form of project changes in the dedicated funding programs in the 2 states. So busy couple of months. Again, the reason we didn't have a TTCC last month wasn't because we didn't have too many agenda items, but we were busy or following up that Indiana MPO conference. And for those that don't know or that weren't there, seemed to go very successfly. All reports were good. We had a great time. Weather cooperated. I think it put kept a good face forward, and I appreciate the staff, the sponsors. We got a tremendous response from the sponsors, and those of you that participated. We appreciate your help and support. And so that was a long report, but that concludes that long report there.
All right, thank you, Andy. Greg, do you have the public comment?
Yes, so we did receive one public comment prior to the meeting by email. It is focused on the next agenda item, but I'll go ahead and read it. So it's into the record. This is said for agenda item number 5, baseline and target setting for performance measures for the Kentuckiana 2050 Metropolitan Transportation Plan update. Goal number 1, objective A, number of fatalities. That target has a higher count of fatalities. I recommend it be significantly lower. Goal 1, objective B, number of non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries. The target is the same. I recommend it be significantly lower by at least 25% under baseline. We must try to reduce these preventable deaths and injuries. Goal number 2, objective A, number of miles pedestrian facilities along a transit route. The increase here is too modest compared to what other cities, MPOs, and states are doing now. Some are increasing the protected, not just paint, bike facilities by 50, 100, 200% over the next few years. That should be our goal 2 for the safety of riders and sustainability of transportation. Goal 2, objective B, prioritize roadway projects that enhance existing infrastructure operations and support connection to other modes. There are no measure here, but there should be. How about percentage of bike facilities that meet the FHWA preferred bicycle facility type recommendations from the KYTC Complete Streets, Roads, and Highway Manual? I imagine the baseline is 1% or less, and a 4-year target could be 20%, and 2050 target 75%. Goal 2, objective E, annual hour of peak hour, excessive delay per capita within urbanized areas, CMAQ. Research shows that exhaust from idling vehicles is only polluting at a fraction of the rate as it was 10, 20, 30 years ago when this was a bigger concern. Moderate delays for cars, trucks should not be a factor that incentivizes road expansion, which is costly, unsustainable, incentivize more driving, and increase climate change effects. The target should be much higher, or the goal removed or reworded. Goal 2, objective E, ratio of electric and hybrid vehicles to combustion engine vehicles in the fleet mix. The 2-year target here is essentially the same as the baseline at 1.5%. With incentives from the US DOT and increase in electric vehicle models available, we should be more aggressive to increase the transition to electric vehicles. I recommend 10 to 15% target. Goal 3, objective A, all 3 of these equity measures should have a much tighter target. The 2050 target you have that transit plus biking plus walking will only be 5% of all travel, with 95% done by private vehicles. The target sum should be 20 to 30%, and the 4-year target 10 to 20%. Goal number 4, objective A, each of these level of travel time measures should be rethought, as reducing these times only induces further spending on road expansion and further future maintenance at the expense of alternate modes of transportation than personal vehicles. If you must measure a level of travel time for cars, also add measures for transit on interstates and non-interstates, biking and walking on non-interstates. These modes also increase economic growth in some cases like biking in dense corridors more than by car. Yes, the other objectives speak to this, but not in the same way. Goal number 5, objective A and B, see comment for goal 4. Applies to these as well. Goal 5, objective C, please be more aggressive at reducing the targets. Goal 7, objective B, how is the baseline of 91 miles of bicycle facilities calculated? Does it include sharrows on wide roads where drivers drive at 35 miles an hour faster, or painted bike lanes that are 2 feet wide and along a gutter and on a 45-mile-an-hour road? Recommended a second measure, miles of bike facilities that meet the FHWA preferred bicycle facility type recommendations from the KYTC Complete Streets, Roads, and Highway Manual, with a target of increasing by 400% in 4 years and 1,600% by 2050. Goal 7, objective C, see comments on goal 2, objective A. Goal 7, objective D, new measures, add a measure to track shared bike, e-bike, and scooter usage. Shared scooter and bike usage data can come directly from public agencies providing these services, e.g. Louisville Metro, based on mobility data specification data obtained as a condition of operation. Add a measure to track private bike, e-bike, and scooter usage and ownership to offset car trips. Goal 9, objective A, new measures include the same measures for bike lanes, shared use paths, and sidewalks. This is Michael Schnarley from Open Mobility Foundation. I will forward this email to all TTCC members following this, just so everybody can have that. And obviously, we'll be speaking to this in just a minute here. I think that's it. I didn't see anything in the Q&A or in the chat, and we didn't receive anything else. So.
Okay, thanks, Greg.
Yes, sir.
And we will hopefully be able to address some of these, most of these, in the next item, the Metropolitan Planning Organization Performance Measures Update. Spencer, you are up.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Can you share it, or?
No, you can do it. I was just setting it up here just in case someone had a question. There's like a lot of. So everybody in the room got the most up-to-date version. In the memo, there was a link, and every time we were making updates, basically at the end of every day, we would update the, based on the targets. And so I made sure, like, 45 minutes ago, I printed out the most up-to-date version and brought it for you all. Everyone that's online, if you go to the link, I don't know, did you send it like in the chat, Greg?
I can drop it in the chat, yeah.
Okay. There's a link on the memo itself that you got in your all's packets last week. And Greg can also put it in the chat, but you'll be able to see the most up-to-date version there too. We just put it on there an hour ago. So, it's I would say it's changed a lot since last week because we've gotten better information. There was literally information that came out within the last week that we didn't have, or we didn't have like just past years, fiscal year 22, or just 2021 data. So there've been a good amount of changes. I have a PowerPoint actually here.
Oh, I didn't
I'm sorry.
see that in the presentation folder.
It's in the, yeah.
That's okay. Yeah, you're good.
All right, so we already approved the performance measures back in January. So all of those are the same. None of those have changed. This is just to update or create the baselines and targets for the next MTP. So performance measures based on targets, like I said, they were approved in January 2022. They're a mixture of federally required and MPO-created measures. They're for the Kentuckiana 2050 MTP update, and they will be put into the next performance management plan as well, which will probably be updated spring next year.
And just so everybody knows, that second bullet point there, a mixture of federally required and MPO-created measures, because this goes a little bit to the comments that we received earlier. USDOT, through Federal Highway Administration and Federal Transit Administration, have set requirements for the state DOTs and for transit agencies to create specific performance measures, okay? Very specific performance measures, and it constrains the targets, structure of the measures, the verbiage of the measures, and when those targets can be set. So, for example, some of the safety ones, we can't be aspirational with those, the ones that are FHWA required, okay? The ones that you'll see in this list that say the source is MPO created measures, it's up to this body and the TPC, I guess, more specifically, to figure out what the heck, we can do whatever we want with those. But to the commenters' points about should have done more, it should have been rewarded. It can't be rewarded, and at least in the reporting that we must do as MPOs that report up to Federal Highways Administration, we cannot do that. And on the federal transit ones, it's a bit different. However, theirs are just in our performance management process and performance management plan by reference. In other words, we take TARCs and plug TARCs into our work here. So.
And just a quick note too, you'll see on the little packet I sent out or gave out, the blue, all these highlighted blue ones, with either the objectives or the measures themselves or the baselines, those are federally required. If they're just white, they're NPO created measures, and the green is also like NPO objectives. The yellow, there's only one set of yellows, I'll get to that in a second. Those are ones that were gonna be subject to change. So there was a lot of yellows when I sent it out last week. Most of them have been fixed, except for that one. And then there are a couple red ones, and those are gonna be the ones that we're gonna recommend to you. I'll get to that at the end. here. Sorry for the people in the room, it's hard to see up there, hopefully you guys can see on the computer, and, you also have a copy from the link. But here are the safety targets, they're all federally required, none of these are NPO measures. So, you know, you got the baseline, the target, depending on who requires them, so FHWAs are, you know, the baseline's a 5-year rolling average, target's also a 5-year rolling average. The objective C at the bottom are from the FDA, they come from Target TTAS. There aren't any baselines that are required in those, so there's the only targets, and those are 1-year targets.
PTAS, Public Transit Agency Plan, if I'm not mistaken, is what that means. And on Objective A and B, those were approved by TTCC and TPC in February. Jeremy Shaw presented those to you all in January. Those are the ones we are required to update annually. And so not only were they updated several months ago, they'll be updated again here in 2 months. And I know it's confusing, but they're going to be updated again before the MTP is updated. So that's a requirement. We don't have any, there's no wiggle room there. So it is what it is on that.
Next section is sustainability. We have the 5 objectives that were approved back in January. The federally required ones are in blue. Those will be the new CMAQ ones that Jeremy had just presented back in August, I believe. They got approved by TTCC. And then we have the ones at the top, which are the PED, bike, the electric vehicle fleet mix. So kind of to answer the one comment about that one, the fleet mix takes 20 years to change over significantly, right, Andy? That sound right? That's kind of what KYTC's research has shown, that the current fleet of battery electric vehicles is somewhere in the fraction of 1% range. This is more than battery electric vehicles, by the way. But it's going to take many, many years, no matter how hard, how hard it's incentivized and subsidized, to move the needle in terms of the overall fleet. The fleet is a giant fleet, and it takes, like you're saying, 20, 25 years for it to fully turn over. So there's no way to move that one fast. And those are actually a little confusing. Most of them aren't like this, but this one actually has like the 2-year and 4-year target for the CMAQ one. Then if you look underneath it says 4-year and 2050 target. So that first number is 4-year. It's not a very big change, but it takes a long time for it to change over. The 2050 target is a lot higher of a goal, more attainable. Almost 30 years. We have equity. These are all NPO measures. We have percent commutes by transit, walking, and biking, the baseline 4-year targets, and then the 2050 target. We have the EJ population within a quarter mile of transit route, and the EJ population within a quarter mile of a bike lane. And then at the very bottom, this was one of the biggest changes. That was accidentally left off. I think on the old sheet, it accidentally, that objective C got copied on there twice. So I fixed that and sent that out today, the newest version. But that one has percent of commutes by telework, percent of commutes by carpool, vanpool, and then once again, it uses the percent of commutes by transit, the same one from objective A.
Might be worth noting here, the many, not all, but many of these things where we say 4-year target and then 2050 target, the approach we took as perhaps, lacking a better term, a default approach, was to make the 4-year target a 10% increase. So modest, but still meaningful. It's possible in many of these cases, if not all cases, hopefully. And then the 2050 target, a lot of those were boosted by what? By 40%. So it was kind of the rule of thumb, lacking trend data, because we don't have trend data on most of these things, right? And so we put some thought into many of them, like the battery electric vehicles or the electric vehicle ones, and with the idea that it takes time to do turnover. It's possible to do something by 2050 that's not possible to do in 4 years. The other ones, it's just as possible to do over the next 4 years as it is the years that follow, I suppose. And so typically, the typical one has a 10% boost to get to a 4-year target and a 40% boost to get to that 2050 target.
I imagine that telework from down there will be, as we get more information, on teleworking in general, especially with the pandemic, having allowed a lot of people to work from home, that'll probably be raised, you know, maybe a higher target will be set, you know, once we have better information going forward. Got economic, got the two at the top that are federally required. Those are the travel time reliability interstate and non-interstate NHS. We have
Just a note on those real quick, Spencer, those are ones that KIPTA has traditionally supported the state's targets. When these were first requirements from the state, first required out of the state DOTs in 2018, KIPTA created regional targets for many of those that the state DOTs were accountable for, were required to generate. These two, and maybe a couple others, but these two and a couple on roadway system, if I'm not mistaken, we supported the state's targets on those, while the rest of them, we created our own regional targets. And so you can see in the description that we're not proposing a regional target on these, but rather to continue to support the state's targets.
Yeah, so we have a baseline just for the KIPTA region right there, but then that 2 and 4 year target would be the statewide. So this one has kind of a special note, on the objective B, you'll notice that those are highlighted yellow, it says to be determined, and then like down 10% and then down 20%. So for that one, we had some incorrect data for the headway on transit routes. So we have it now correct, but we couldn't get it in time for this meeting. We will have it by next Monday, like for the TPC mail out. But we couldn't get it, we just couldn't get it in time today because it's the GIS analysis aspect that goes into it, and then an Excel analysis that goes into it afterwards. And so once we figured out that, you know, some of these headways didn't make any sense, and we figured out why, you know, now we just have to go in and update those numbers. So we'll have that by Monday. That's the only one that we didn't get by this meeting. So giving you guys a heads up. And we have jobs within a quarter-mile walk, where sidewalks are present, jobs within a mile bike ride, dedicated bike facilities. Roadway system, so some more federally required measures here. Once again, like Andy said, supporting the statewide targets. These are actually the same as the ones from number 4. They just support different objectives. So you'll notice a few times throughout that some are reused because they support more than one goal or objective. And then we have, we changed the stabilize and decrease vehicle miles traveled from a total number for the region, so it was something like 11.5 billion annual VMT to a per capita, because while the VMT annually as a whole will go up by 2050, or likely go up by 2050, hopefully the per capita goes down. So there'll be more people walking, biking, using transit, carpooling, vanpooling, that type of thing. Then we have public electric vehicle chargers at the bottom as well, so those should rapidly increase, of course, with the adoption of battery electric vehicles and hybrid vehicles that use the chargers. Transit, have the annual park ridership, have population served in transit areas within a quarter-mile of a route, number of schools served, number of employees served in transit service area, and the number of rideshare trips. The rideshare trips, a big factor in that increasing is really, because you'll notice it starts out at 23,000 and it goes to 4.5 million. A big part of increasing that number is getting people to actually log the trips in the ETC program. So really, anybody that telecommutes, carpools, like whether they use every commute counts or not, can put their telecommuting, can put their, you know, walking to work, biking to work, all that. Anytime they don't use a single occupancy vehicle, put it in there. You know, I'm not 100% sure, like, exactly what the incentive is, like, just for, you know, Joe Q Public to put it in there, other than, you know, trying to give us some good data. But we could, you know, hopefully, like I know at ECC, they're trying to encourage more people to track it, and then we can hopefully, because we know there's more than 23,000. I just looked at like just if you go back to the baseline for the telework workers, you know, if there's 6% of all trips or something are telework, you know, that's probably more than 22,000. So hopefully we can increase the usage of the ECC program for tracking that kind of stuff.
For that matter, on that one, the baseline is, a byproduct of the times we live in right now, in that the baseline is, that program is a little bit off from where it was before pre-pandemic, and so all the momentum since 2021, that baseline has been positive, and so more van pools paid for by the employers as a benefit to the commuter, so there's some good momentum in that program, and so that, again, the baseline is just a bit low. Probably the same things could be true about some of the, 6A TARC fixed route ridership. You know, it's still a strange time in terms of ridership numbers and transit across the region and across the country.
Active transportation, we have number of miles of pedestrian facilities. They kind of do the same thing as the one they talked about before, with like an increase of 10 and an increase of 40%. Same with the number of bicycle facility miles, and then the number of miles of pedestrian facilities on the transit route and bike facilities on the transit route is bottom as well. Great. So one federal measure here, that's the truck travel time reliability, and the other two are just objectives that don't have performance measures supporting them. And then the last page, we have resiliency. A lot of different stuff here. We have, so at the top, we have the federally required measures, which are percent of pavements in good condition or poor condition on interstates, and then on non-interstate national highway system. And then we have those ones in red that are the borderline condition, and those are NPO measures. Since we decided to support the state targets for the 2-year and 4-year targets, we decided to get rid of the borderline because, or you know, wanting to get rid of the borderline because they don't give us data on that.
Yeah, so some of you all may remember, 4 years ago now, where we first dipped our toe into these performance measures. The ones in blue in 9A were ones that we created regional targets. And what we did was we took the 2 state DOTs, pavement data and crunched the numbers, and we got regional targets, right? However, that left us wanting, or it wasn't a complete data set. It's not a complete data set because we lacked consistent pavement data on all of the other pavements in our region that aren't on state-owned roads. In Indiana, there are very few state-owned roads. There's the interstates, and there's not much more than that. In Kentucky, it's a different story, I know, but in Indiana, so we didn't have data. We didn't have data on y'all's local roads. There is pavement condition on the local roads, but it's not in the format that the feds require. This thing called good and poor and fair, not borderline, but fair, those are conditions that are prescribed. And so we did not get much bang for our buck. We didn't get much mileage out of this, and it was a monster to tackle. And so what we've chosen to do this go-around is to support the state's targets on that front, because they're monitoring the payments. They've done it forever, and we don't have that expertise. And for that matter, another reason in our minds anyways to simply support the state's targets is the idea that as a long-range planning activity, keeping these pavements are likely to be repaved once or twice over the 25-year life of our MTP, right? And so it's going to be a cyclical thing in the first place, so there's not much bang for our buck there. The borderline condition, what we tried to tackle at that time was to try to identify the pavements that are about to go poor. We used the federal measures and said, hey, these pavements are about to be poor. Let's keep an eye on those and let's improve those, or let's be ready to improve those. But again, we didn't get much mileage for it, mostly because it's an incomplete data set. And so in this case, we're not ignoring it anymore. We're just going to support the state's targets, much like we did for the travel time reliability ones.
Andy, I will say that Louisville Metro has a rating of our roadway that we could provide you all, and those ratings could result in good, fair, poor.
That's right, and so that's what I think I think that's where we'll be in the not too distant future, is somehow making the pavement conditions a part of our, online resources. Zach's gonna talk a little bit about those coming up, but something that's available for the public to see, with or without the federally required measures. The issue, Dirk, was getting that translation from the metro scale, or the condition, which works just fine for you guys, same scale, things you've been doing for a long time, it was my understanding, into the federal scale. And you had to measure in a particular way, and so therefore we only had the data that could define it good, fair, and poor. We could have taken everybody's pavement condition and said some condition might equal the federal good, and some would be obviously poor, and then call everything else fair. But we didn't. We thought that'd be a little dicey to go ahead and do that. So we're not giving up on it. We want to make this a part of what we do. But in terms of setting these targets, I think it
won't be a performance measure, but we can still do it, and provide it as, like you said, on the online resource center, various different formats if people would like it.
Because as I understand it, there's no incentive for a city or a county to begin to measure their payments in the exact way that the feds have required the states to do so. You know, if they did, it might be a difference maker. It would. But for that matter, those measures that they required are simply on the interstates and on the non-interstate national highway system. And so most of the projects many of the improvement projects in our TIP are not on those subsets of roads, including many of the roads that are under the ownership of this body. So there's more to it than that. There's more to it than the measures that the feds require, and so it's better to be a statewide measure. It's something that the states have asset management professionals that have been working on it for years, and now they're required to report it over the last 4 years in a different way.
And we have on the improved bridge conditions, the top two are the same as the objective A, where it's good and poor condition, and then you have, so we adopted the state targets on those, and then we have our own measures that look at collector roads that are in good and poor condition.
Real quick, Spencer, we did not support the state's targets on those. These are regional targets on those. The bridge condition one is different than the pavements in this regard. The top two in blue under 9B, those are the federally required measures, once again, because they're blue, or not because they're blue, because they are that. So the data are equally available on the most local bridge in your city or county as is available for the Ohio River bridges, right? There's a national bridge inventory that has all the bridges and all the culverts in it. And so therefore it's a consistent data source, while the pavement data was a very inconsistent data source. And so these are regional, we're going to continue to do regional targets there, and the two in white, those are us going above and beyond, you could say. And by that, I mean, the federally required ones are limited to the National Highway System Network. Well, the priority of many people in this room and on the Zoom call is not necessarily the National Highway System Network. It's bridges on your all's local roads and collector roads and what have you. And so we wanted a more well-rounded one, and so we added that to the mix too.
And we have, these are some newer ones that are required from the FTA. Comes from the TARC TAM plan. The percent of non-revenue vehicles exceeding useful life benchmark, and the percent of revenue vehicles exceeding useful life benchmark. So we get the baselines and targets from the TARC TAM plan. Objective B comes from the PTAS. Yes, PTAS, sorry, I didn't put it in the data spot there. It comes from that, so that's the same as the ones on the first page. Comes from that same set of targets, so there's no baseline.
And those are all Federal Transit Administration required ones, and yes, the reliability of the buses is in their safety plan, not in their asset management plan. Go figure.
Yeah.
Figure. But again, these are all in our performance management plan because transit agencies are required per FTA to ensure that their agency asset management plans and their agency safety plans are included in the regional MPO's performance management planning efforts, okay? So we have to have these in here, or TARC has to get these into ours. How about that? Is one way of looking at it.
Yeah, those numbers should say like 5,478 miles, and average number of miles between
Right,
major, maintenance.
mechanical breakdowns or something
Yeah.
like that, yeah.
Which they use. And then there's just the last three that don't have performance measures, but those are the three objectives. Right, and that's all I have. So this is kind of complicated. We can have, of course, discussions. Should I read this part first? I don't know, it's been a while. So requested action on something. Do I read it first, or do I let everybody discuss first?
Probably need a motion, a second, and a discussion.
Okay, so, actions requested for, your all recommendation for approval of the performance measures, baselines and targets, and removing two of the Connecting Kentuckiana 2050 performance measures themselves, which is that borderline pavement condition on interstate and non-interstate national highway systems.
For a motion.
Make a motion to approve the baselines and measures.
For a second.
Second.
Second, thank you, Matt. So we have a motion and a second. Now we can open for discussion. Any questions or comments to Spencer? Ida?
Thank you very much. I really appreciate KIPTA staff's effort to put this together. This is a major component of the planning process. I just would like to say, I personally would prefer to have a little bit more time to review, especially transit targets set here. And I understand that many of them are set by FTA and FED, and we have to follow that, but also other targets that tie into our region, the culture of driving, the percentage of increase, the expected improvement. I personally would like to have a little bit more time just to review and understand where we are heading and also provide my input. So I did review what was in the package. There still was a lot of targets to be determined. And again, I am not standing in the way. I go with the team, with the group. I trust completely the effort of the KIPTA team, but at the moment, I'm not the most comfortable with approving these targets in such a short period of time.
Thank you for that. Along those same lines, is there anybody else that would like to comment on that? I think that's a fair comment.
It is, and I apologize that we didn't get them out sooner or efficiently. It's a monster undertaking, it certainly is.
Yeah. Are we
and-
under a time constraint on this?
Well,
Andy?
yes,
Yeah.
in that these are fundamental to, among other things, the scoring process for our MTP projects, okay? And so, that time constraint is in the form of, that draft MTP is going to be presented to the TPC in February. 2 short meetings from now, because December we won't have meetings, and so it is a fundamental part of that MTP that we need to make sure is settled one way or the other in terms of the numbers. We will have that transit headway calculated in advance of the TPC meeting, and so we will point that out. We'll make a point to point out to the TPC that the TTCC did not get a chance to see that one, and so we will make a note to do that. We certainly will do that, I should say. But again, I apologize that we didn't get them too far in advance. A lot of them are new, and for those that don't know, a lot of them there's some that we with what was approved in January that Spencer mentioned. Our first endeavor years ago into this, we created too many, quite frankly, and we either couldn't measure them or they weren't meaningful. And so we've dropped several, like with approval. We talked about that in January. We believe that this set of performance measures is more along the lines of the right set of performance measures to take forward. It's the right things to be prioritizing in our long-range planning, for example. So again, I apologize. I mean, I'll leave that up to the committee what we do about that, but it is something that we wish we would have had a little sooner, and we do apologize for that.
Thank you.
Other questions, comments? Yes, we have a motion and a second on the floor.
I got a procedural question. Given in light of Aida's comments, could we amend the motion to allow Aida to review the performance measures and make comments before it goes to the TPC?
I'd be okay with that, and what, maybe something else we can offer is a KIPTA staff TARC meeting in the interim between now and Monday or Tuesday. Tuesday being the date that we will be mailing the packet to the TPC. Again, Tuesday of Thanksgiving week is when TPC meets this month, so it's an eyeball month in that regard. So we'd be happy to do that and make that a part of that, to what Jim is mentioning.
Right, and thank you for that, Jim. Aida, does that sound reasonable?
That sounds great. Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity just to revisit one more time before it goes to final decision. Nothing may change, but I think it's worth looking into that. So thank you for the suggestion, Jim, and for your willingness to approve. Thank you.
So the motion would have to be amended if the motion makers would be willing to do that, to allow for that comment.
Yes, I want to amend the motion to approve the performance measures, baselines, and targets with the exception of item 6, transit.
Well,
Yeah, there might be.
How about
How
about 4 and 6, because the one that we need to talk transit with Aida, as much as the ones that are unique to transit, the transit ones are throughout. They are in anything that's asset management.
Okay, with the exception of anything related to transit.
That covers it all. Matt, you seconded, were you?
Yeah, I'll second.
Okay, so the amended motion is on the floor. Thank you, Dirk, thank you, Matt, and thanks, Jim, for bringing that up. Any other questions, comments, discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all in favor, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you all, too, for that. That was a little complicated, but that was seamless. So, we will move on.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Spencer, and thank you for all your work on it.
There was a lot of help from everybody back here.
That's great, good job.
A lot of,
Teamwork, good, like it. Active transportation plan, Alex, you are up.
Thank you, sir, and I'll be a little bit more brief than Spencer was. So everybody can breathe a sigh of relief there. So y'all remember our Complete Streets policy that we just finalized over the summer. We are now ready to start the discussion about what has been intended to be a companion piece of that, our active transportation plan. Basically, I just wanted to really quickly walk through what that is, and I will be asking for action, Mr. Chair, on just approval for setting up a working group to help staff work through this in calendar 2023. But as we had originally envisioned, the active transportation plan is a companion piece to the Complete Streets, basically to serve as a resource for the region and for our local governments to look at, identify strengths in our existing active transportation, our bike and our pedestrian network region-wide, to identify gaps, to help prioritize projects that could help that, and to really communicate a lot of the progress for many of the measures that Spencer was talking about related to active transportation. We would like to put a working group together because we want to make sure that this is especially helpful to jurisdictions, and staff very much wants to get the input of our member jurisdictions on this as we put the plan together. We're envisioning somewhere between a 6 to a 12-month process on this, depending on participation levels and what happens. We'd probably be asking for at least 3 meetings from this working group, maybe 4, sort of an intro to talk about exactly what this is going to be, at least 1 working meeting, and then a final meeting to approve the plan. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
So are you asking for your request is from the working group?
Yes.
Do you want to see if anybody wants to volunteer now, or do you want them to contact you later?
I would love to do both.
Okay, okay. So, I guess before we do the action, let's see if anybody, is there anybody that would like to volunteer? How many folks do you think you need?
I would love to have at least 5, and would love to have, at least a couple people
Cross-section.
from, each side of the river.
Okay. Is there anybody,
I think Metro would probably want 2, 3 spots on that committee.
I would like to volunteer TARP, but it may not be me. It may be one of the planners working on that, if this is okay.
Wonderful, that's
Thank
great.
TARC and Metro, Dirk, are you gonna be responsible for bringing in?
I'll provide the names.
Okay, you'll take care of that, okay. We have anybody from Indiana?
Looks like, where's my roll call? Today on the line, we are limited to NDOT staff,
Okay.
and Kevin Beatty from Clarksville
Mhm.
was on. I don't see him.
Brian Dixon from.
Brian's on as well, so we don't wanna put them on the
Right,
spot, but,
right. Well, we can maybe have somebody, we'll put it out there that somebody from Indiana. Do you want the surrounding counties, that usually falls on either Jim or I, and I would volunteer for that unless Jim wants to. I'm just throwing you right under the bus, Jim, because it's either, I mean,
Well,
always-
I'm short-staffed and I'd hate to commit to something that I can't fulfill, so I prefer not to this time.
I'll take that one. So I pulled you back from under the bus, so I'm throwing you under
Appreciate
the
that. And Aida didn't even start the bus, so don't worry about it.
We're gonna have a lot more sidewalks.
Gotta leave you.
There you go, that's right, that's what we're doing here. So that sounds like you've got a pretty good working group if we can get
Yeah.
representation from the other side of the river.
New Albany's would be, obviously,
I think they do.
With the, permission of the committee, I can follow up with
That'd be great.
Indiana jurisdictions to, put a nice ask in.
Okay. Got a good start on that, so we need a motion, to form the working group that we've actually already formed here. So, a motion.
I make a motion that the staff can form a working group for the active transportation.
A motion, is there a second?
Second.
Got a second? Any other questions, comments, discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all in favor say aye or raise your hand. Any opposed? All right, we got a working group.
And, just a last note, probably by January or February, so I was looking for that initial meeting.
Great.
But I'll be in touch with everybody.
Thank you, Alex. Andy, we need to put together a nominating committee for the PTC officers. We need my time is run out. I've been term limited, as chair, so we need a new chair and a new vice chair. I will be on that committee, and we need 2 other folks, for the nominating committee. And we need, I guess we'll go ahead and see if anybody wants to do this, and then we'll go ahead and get a motion for that.
Right, so it's per our bylaws. Our bylaws say here in November, we will establish a nominating committee, that would be, and they would present in January, our next scheduled meeting, for our 2023 chair and vice chair. And so it also says that the chairman, and as you mentioned, 2 other PTCC members, are on that nominating committee. And I would envision, Keith, would be kind of up to you two. We'd sometime here later this month, 1st of December, we'd come up with some names. We'd meet and come up with some names. It's probably a single or 2 30-minute meetings is all it is. So I'd be happy to have any and all volunteers. We need 2. Looking for 2.
Keith, this is Barry, Mount
Yes, sir.
Washington. I unfortunately did not win my candidacy for re-election last night in Mount Washington. And I just want to tell everybody I've enjoyed working on this committee. I know that the meetings won't be until January. And I appreciate all you all do for all of our community, our region. And it's been very, very, very successful for us. And I appreciate being a part of it. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor.
We appreciate the comment. Thank you.
So again, we're not asking for a chair and a vice chair. We're asking just for somebody to help nominate a chair and a vice chair. just to be clear, in case there's any misunderstanding.
I will volunteer.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we need one more.
I can do that. I mean,
There
I
you go.
anticipate that we might have them on a Zoom. It's easy enough for us to do. So,
Absolutely, yeah,
Yep.
it'll be straightforward.
sure.
Okay, so we have the committee in place. We just now need, action to form this committee. We just need a motion.
So,
moved.
second.
Got a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye or raise your hand. That passes. So, so Jim and I will be in touch when we're ready to move with this, and we'll get that one put to bed. All right, moving on. Alex, you're back up with planning assumptions.
I think we have, correct me if I'm wrong, Andy, but one, final structural piece, for approval for the MTP update. This one's, hopefully a little bit more pro forma than, the performance measures, but it is our planning assumptions. And this was in everybody's packet. KIPTA in analyzing, projects and, moving forward for the Metropolitan Transportation Fund uses a wide variety of planning assumptions, in the planning process. These are used to support a number of things, including regional air quality conformity determination, and they are all described over 4 or 5 pages within your packet. These are planning assumptions that we have used, I think, consistently for as long as a decade, Andy?
Oh, I would say most of these go back beyond that, you know. They don't rear their head very often, but every now and then, especially as Alex mentions when it comes down to the air quality conformity analysis, the nitty-gritty when we get in there, it's that time when people ask about what's your planning assumptions. And so most of these, virtually all of these, are no change or virtually no change. They are updated using newer data. Is probably the primary change among these.
You've got a track changes version within your packets that show what's actually been changed. And again, it is almost exclusively, as Andy said, updating things from, say, 2010 census to more up-to-date data. The name of our data provider for what was InfoUSA, and now it's Data Axle, so that's changed. Mainly, again, a highlight of pro forma changes. I'm happy to answer any questions or defer to Andy or Randy for any questions that I may not be able to answer, but I'll leave it at that. We are asking for we'll leave it at that for now. Before questions, we are asking for a motion for approval for this to go into the update of the MTP.
And as I see these, most of these changes are just, I mean, it's not like hard data changes, right?
No.
That's
It is basically, not almost all of the changes that are in here have been previously approved for anything that's any methodology change. This is formally changing the name and then explaining it in detail, the methodology.
That's right. Anything in black represents, until TPC presumably approves these later this month, our current planning assumptions. So the things in color are tweaking those very slightly to say things like we use different data sets than we used last time because there's a newer data set available.
Right.
And page 3, we note that we now include 2016 to 2020 ACS estimates instead of just the 11 to 16 that we had.
Okay, is there a motion to accept the changes in the planning assumptions? Is that correct?
That'd be correct. Yeah.
Motion. Hands up.
I'll make a motion.
We have a motion. Is there a second? Throw in there, Matt.
I'll second.
Okay.
There we go.
All right, there we go.
Hold it like
He is on the board now. There we go. All right, we got a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Oh,
Aye.
I'm sorry, Ida, you have, The question? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I would like to make a comment, and again, thank you, KIPTA team. Just one observation that I noticed in these assumptions is it says, for example, that transit fares will rise with inflation. So I would like to see that changed because there is a completely different discussion in the transit industry for many agencies to go fare free or with pilot projects. So I would like to kind of talk about that with the KIPTA team when we talk about target set. That does not stop approval, does not stop the process, but just as we go, that we adjust these assumptions based on the trends in the.
Okay.
And just to be clear, the reason that's even in here, is in relation to any, travel demand modeling or equality modeling and how that shows itself. Transit fares as an increase in fares would be, would decrease the, increase in fares would decrease the utility of taking transit. And so therefore, if we have a consistent transit fares, or if we make the assumption that transit fares and tolls on the Ohio River bridges increase with inflation, that gives us the flexibility in our various model year scenarios, of which we have one that for every 5 years going out into the future, that we don't have to tweak each and every individual one, because then if they got on a different trajectory with inflation, the cost in the model is in minutes, and so in the tolls, and same for transit fares too. It needs to be translated into time. Our model doesn't understand dollars, and so that's the assumption there. And again, it's strictly a air quality conformity model function. It's not a big picture thing in this regard.
Sounds good, thank you.
Consistent then with what we have been using for amendments, correct, Andy?
Yes. Oh yeah. Yes. That assumption has not changed at all. Even we just kind of cleaned up the grammar.
It's not always also we said that if we had to try to anticipate what inflation would do relative to the increase in cost, where do you get the data?
Yeah.
I mean, it is a fallback position because the data is to try to model something like that is almost impossible.
Good. Thanks.
Thank you, Paul. And again, I apologize. I thought you were raising your hand before it. I got a little bit of a delay here. All right, any other questions or comments? Hearing and seeing none. All in favor say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes. Thank you. Zach, you are up with the GIS Hub website. Okay. Our screen, right?
Afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's the fun portion. So I'm just here to go over, or briefly showcase what we've been working on in the GIS department here. I'm pretty proud of it. It's going to open up a lot of new doors for cooperation and sharing opportunities between with us and our partners and the public. It's a new format that Esri has put out there called the Hub website. It's basically a website built by Esri, hosted by Esri, that we can put all of our neat tools on there for you. So currently they live right here in our planning portal that many of you have probably been to. And if you click on the interactive maps, it's going to take you to this page, web maps, with these six is what we have on there right now. So I'm gonna migrate all this stuff to our hub page, which is going to look like this. And you can see those 6 apps are still available on the hub page. And there's places for plenty more that I plan to add in the future. We also have story maps that we've presented to you guys before in other meetings. The access to the transit story map, this was presented at the MPO conference and also at our GIS conference by my colleague Joseph Garcia, and I believe that Alex also was a big part in working on that. And this just, if you click on it, you can go view basically his presentation that he gave. It's a story map of his process, what they did, and No, it's running really slow over here. It's basically their methodology and what the output was. I put the crash analysis story map that I presented in here. You just click view and go there. The public comment map that Greg reads many of the comments from. There's a button to go to that if you would like to see it. But the most important thing and the most exciting thing about this whole page is that this opens up the same thing that Logic has, if you've been to their website, a open data portal. And this allows us to share web services, so anyone else using an ArcGIS format can just log on, can pull from our services and open it up on their online accounts or even ArcPro. And then, or you could get on and download any files that we put out there that we feel you guys might want to look at on your own PCs, on your own hard drives, and even edit if you would like. So I'll just click on the transportation planning projects, and here we have the TIP projects and the MTP projects, and these are just the apps that were on the previous page if you wanted to, it's just another way to navigate to those. Well, let's go to TIP real quick, and I'll click on it, and you can see the options it gives you. I can download anything I would like from this data set. So let's go, just click on download. It's going to ask me what file type I want. And let's say I just want a shapefile of it that I'm going to open and mess around with on my own PC. I click download. And it's really slow over here. It should give you an option to open your download and to save it to your own hard drive.
Your Wi-Fi is better than
Hopefully your Wi-Fi is better. Now it does take a minute, even on my fast machine that's connected, hardwired into our server over there. When you click download, especially on shapefile, it took it 2 minutes to process before it actually was able to save. So do give it some time. But once you have it, it's on your PC. You can do what you want with it. And we may use this in the future if we have data requests, and it's a request that I think others may want. I know one thing we got coming up, it's election day, and on the horizon I know is redistricting. So this may be a big part, being able to download and use this for redistricting purposes. If you look in the data portal, there are several different, there are 8 different categories that I've set up right now. So just as an example, you can go to the bike data, and we've got a lot of our analysis with bike and ped gap data, and just our sidewalk bike ped inventory data is also on here, all available for, that can be used for download if you want to put it on your own machine. Let's say I just want bike facilities. It'll take us to a similar interface as we were looking at before, and I can click download, and it'll give me options, what I would like to download, and I won't do it again, but it'll save this to your hard drive if you want, or you can open it as a web service. So anyway, in the future, look for this page, Interactive Maps, to be KIPTA GIS Data Hub, and instead of it looking like web maps, it's going to look like KIPTA Data Hub. And plan on doing a lot. This is where I plan on hosting most of our GIS data from now on. Lots of any new applications we build, congestion data, name it. We'll try and get it out there for you.
Yeah, and so hopefully this will allow us the opportunity to, serve the power user, if you will. Your off staffs or consulting firm that's working for you or something like that. They can come and get it 24/7 what they need. But we'll still have it out there for the general public that might not have GIS software on the computer. So we're not giving up on that. By no means are we giving up on that. It's just trying to meet the power user and some of you all where you need this data.
Yeah, and I think it's a little bit, it's a one-stop shop for GIS applications and GIS data that we can provide for the region. That's all I got, if there's any questions.
Any questions or comments?
Yeah, hi, this is Michelle, APCD. I will start with a comment, which is just to say I really applaud KIPDA's efforts over the last several years to make data more accessible and visualized and all of these tools. I've used them many times myself and have sent those links to many others over the past few years. So thank you for that. And this is another great step in that direction. I was just wondering, is this a subscription service from Esri, or how have we?
Yeah, it is. First, we have 3 years ago, we upgraded to ArcGIS Enterprise, which is a little bit more robust. It gave us more licenses to pass out to our other team members, and also gave us these online applications. I'm just starting to scratch the surface, honestly, of what they've included with all this, but I'm not exactly sure what other packages they provide where you can get Hub, but I know if you have an online account with Esri, you can get on, and at least there's a free version that I think they have that's pretty minimal, but you can play around with, and then you can decide whether or not you want to invest further in it. I don't even think we have the pro package. We just have what's included. But they're much. This is just kind of the middle of the road package, I guess is what we'll call it. But as much money as you want to give Esri, they'll give you something back.
Thanks. That's a helpful context.
It is kind of an out of the box package from Esri that anyone can buy. It just depends on how much money you want to spend.
Right. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, and keep up the innovation.
Okay, thanks.
All right, thanks, Zach. Alex, you're back up with Safe Streets update.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a brief overview of where we're at with the Safe Streets and Roads for All application program. We promised we would give regular updates as this process went along. Just a quick reminder for those who may not have been following every move of this. The Safe Streets and Roads for All funding program is a new U.S. DOT program aimed at increasing highway safety, decreasing traffic fatalities. It came out of the new bipartisan infrastructure law, the transportation reauthorization bill from last November, and basically has two stages of funding. Funding for an action plan for increasing roadway safety in your jurisdiction or group of jurisdictions, and then an implementation phase where you would implement an action plan with a lot of additional federal support for those projects. You're not eligible for an implementation grant until you have an action plan. So when KIPDA had first looked at this in the spring, we said there's not an existing regional action plan, and for the most part, most jurisdictions in the region do not have a U.S. DOT stamp of approval action plan. We talked with everybody, see if there was interest in going in together on a collaborative to get one of those, and 16 jurisdictions agreed to join up. So we submitted the application on September 15th. We expect to hear in late January if we will be successful. We are, as those of you who are a part of this collaborative know, are holding an initial organizational meeting tomorrow, which, we hope we're not jumping the gun too much. We still don't know if we'll get it, but we know if we do get the application or are successful that we're going to want to go immediately and start the process, because time will be of the essence, because the sooner we have a U.S. DOT stamp of approval for an action plan, the sooner we can actually be eligible for that implementation funding. There'll be a lot of competition for that in the later years, so we want to try and hop on in year 2 or year 3. So tomorrow we'll have an organizational meeting. We hope to figure out a handful of things. We'll be talking about basically a run-through of setting expectations, sort of what we can and cannot do according to U.S. DOT with this planning process, so we're all on the same page there. We'll lay out a process calendar. We'll discuss a little bit of what products we should all be expecting to get out of this if we are successful, and we'll try and get some feedback for the RFQ that we hope to be putting together ahead of January, so if we do get the grant, we're able to flip that switch right away and get moving. Looking ahead, if we do get the grant, we'll put the RFQ out in February. We anticipate, probably, about 30 days, I'd say, leaving that open. Then probably another 30 days to determine who we'd like to pick. A little bit of back and forth with that consulting team, I'm sure, about the final agreement. And then a rough start date of May of 2023 for the process if we're successful, with the idea that we try and do it as quick as we could, but probably for now, I want to assume about a 12-month process on that, with completion in May 2024. No action required on this, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions or comments?
Save them all for tomorrow. How about that?
Yeah. What's time for?
All right, thank you, Alex.
Thank you.
Nick? You're feeling-
Yes. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Sorry, I gotta present from home. My whole family's been going through the flu this past week or so. I'm here just to give you guys a quick update on how things are going with project development for the new MTP and TIP, as well as the MPO dedicated call for projects. Greg's got a couple slides here I'm going to show real briefly, and then I can take any questions if you have them. So in terms of project development for the new MTP and TIP, we've got over 330 project applications that have been submitted through our new form using Survey 123, which is integrated with ArcGIS. It's going to allow us to more easily model and evaluate these projects. There's still well over 50 projects that KIPTA staff needs to submit on behalf of sponsors. We took that kind of burden on to submit any existing projects. And there's still, I think, a few questions for a few sponsors out there in terms of some projects that we didn't receive information back on. I think most of the information was submitted on time through the deadline of October 31st. Again, we still have a few questions here and there with sponsors, but we appreciate everyone's hard work on this over the last 3 months or more. And the goal is really to complete project entry and the evaluation process. Our goal is no later than November 30th. We can get it done before that. That would be ideal. But as you can imagine, sifting through 300 plus 400 projects and all of the data that's involved is kind of onerous. So that's where we are in a nutshell when it comes to project development. Anybody have any questions about that? Okay. And then moving on to the dedicated call for projects. So I've listed all the agencies that have submitted applications here. If you don't see your agency on here and you think you were planning to submit an application for MPO dedicated call or MPO dedicated funds, please contact us ASAP. The deadline was October 31st, and there's some folks that we thought we'd hear from that we did not. In Indiana, we received about $19 million worth of projects. There's actually $21 million available. So it looks like if these are the slate, the 8 projects, it looks like we well likely will be able to fully fund them. And obviously some of that depends on the project types. What I'm not getting to in this presentation is all the breakdowns for the different funding programs. But in general, it looks like we will get very close to being able to fully fund folks in Indiana. So you can see we got 1 from Air Pollution Control District, 4 from Clark County, and 3 from Clarksville. In Kentucky, we received 48 applications, totaling $114 million with, we have about $78 million available across the 3 programs. We received 1 from APCD, 1 from Bullitt County, 4 from J-Town, 5 from KYTC, 30 from Metro. And that is a little misleading because I would say 80% of those are existing projects that don't have funding for future phases. And a lot of those are large dollar amounts. So they're coming back to request those funds for existing projects. 2 from Middletown, those are also existing that needed additional funds through the Transportation Alternatives Program. And for a reminder, we only have cost increase funds available in the Surface Transportation Block Grant Program. So if you receive Transportation Alternatives funds in the past, you've been limited to what you've received from TPC previously. So Middletown is coming back asking for a little more on 2 projects. Prospect submitted 1 new one. We got 2 new projects from TARC and also 2 new projects from the University of Louisville. So that's my kind of report in a nutshell for the project development and MPO dedicated call for projects. I can take any questions or comments.
Anything for Nick? All right, hearing and seeing none. Nick, take care of yourself. Hope you get feeling better.
Appreciate it, y'all.
All right, Greg, you are up.
Yes, annual kite award is back again. This will be our 8th year doing it. Nominations are in. We, going through as a staff right now and, kind of deciding out who's going to be the winner. I understand, I know it was tough flooding this year trying to get projects in because not a lot of people had things that were completed, but, the ones we did get in were really well. And, the winner will be announced at the November, TPC, meeting that's on the 22nd. At 9:30 a.m. So, over at the John Black Center in Oldham County, we're taking on the road this year.
That's right.
So, yeah, look forward to any of the TPC members there, that are in this meeting today. We'll see you then.
Sounds great. Thanks, Greg. Andy, do we have any other business?
Just one real quick, well, maybe two. Pay attention to what Greg just said. Those of you that come to TPC, it's a atypical month, Tuesday, November 22nd, 9:30 a.m., John Black Community Center in Buckner. Okay? The board meeting would follow at 11. And then after the board meeting, there will be lunch. So, can't get virtual lunch, don't get in-person lunch. One more thing, very important, a staff report. We have a new person. Might be a stranger to many of the folks in the room. Last Monday, October 31st, we had a new transportation planner come to our staff. That's Miss Chris Nicholas. She's back here in the back. So you'll be hearing a lot from Chris in the coming months and years. So, Chris, you want to tell us where you came from and background a little bit?
Yeah, I'm Chris Nicholas. Started October 31st. I have lived in the area since 2015. I moved here from Atlanta, Georgia, but I'm originally from New York. Previously working at the National Processing Center over in Jeff for Census Bureau. Excited to work.
Fun fact here, for those of you that have been around for a little bit, in 2017, a woman named Lori Kelsey retired from KIPTA after many years of service. Lori Kelsey and Chris share an alma mater, Binghamton University. So of all places to have two KIPTA staff come from a school in upstate New York. So go figure.
Well, welcome aboard.
Thank you.
No more other business that I have.
All right, if there's nothing else, we will take a motion to adjourn.
I'll second Dirk's motion.
Thank you.